Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the Dropping In Surf Show. My name is Rob Case. I am a paddling technique coach. I'm recording from Belmarine Keys, California. Today is Wednesday, July 8th, 2020. With me, as always, is Doctor of Physical Therapy. Recording from Green Bay, California, is Jim Segelnik. Hey, Jim. What do you think of the new room?
Yeah, where are you at now? Is that that's one of your rooms upstairs? Your office, maybe?
Good. It's close. It's
you're downstairs, actually.
It's the downstairs classroom. Yeah,
that's right.
I was going. I have the high back chair. I was going for like the whole sophisticated. I should have a bourbon in my hand kind of look.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if you turn that chair around. And then you turned around quickly, I would expect to see like that villain from Inspector Gadget where it's just a hand.
Claw,
is that his name?
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna have to. You're gonna take me back now. I think I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Yeah. Well, someone can correct me on that.
Yeah. I lose the effect because this is actually our glider. Do you have a glider?
We used to, but no, not anymore.
Yeah, so this is far from sophisticated. It probably has gallons of spit up all over it from when the kids were young. It's super comfortable though, and I'm sporting like the post session sunscreen still. So yeah,
you just had a client, right?
Yeah, it was good.
Cool.
It was our last session. He did great. An improvement of 20%. Which is pretty awesome. So
cool,
awesome. So
you're back in the saddle, man. It's great to see you working with surfers again.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a blast. What have you been up to?
Well, as usual, I'm back in the clinic. My cases, not COVID cases, are slowly ramping up. It's pretty quacky, man. Like I treat people with a mask, gloves, and a face shield now. So that's the latest update. Is I'm now recommended to wear a splash mask, which just makes me feel like a total kook when I work with people because it's like the thing fogs up, and then you're trying to work with people and you're like, I don't know. It's just my I saw my coworker today wearing goggles that I think was donated by one of the local high school science department. Those kind of goggles.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, where did you get that? I need that. Because he said they don't fog up. And he's like, well, if you go downstairs, there might be a batch, but like everyone's like onto it now. So I think they're gone. So I got this like, it looks like a welding mask splash shield. So
you should tint it all black. Make some like Darth Vader markings on it.
Yeah, totally. Well, my next step was just to go full on welding helmet. Like, like have it encased and have the little square where they just see my eyes.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
You're basically working their muscles in that same form that a welder would.
Or you could be like working their psychology too. Like if a patient needs to grit through some pain, like they walk in the room and then you have that in like a trench coat and like rubber boots and you
plastic lining the ground.
Yeah, now I'm gonna get some phone call. Thanks.
No, you guys should just get sponsored by like Smith goggles or something. Like the snowboarding, skiing goggles.
Yeah, I don't know if PT's that cool, man. I'd love to see a company like Smith or a Patagonia sponsor me to treat patients in a clinic. I don't think I'm there yet with the cool factor.
It would be even funnier if like halfway through your session you'd have to pause for like an ad spot for them. Be like, "Oh man, I'm just so glad that Patagonia is supporting us so we can do this today."
Yeah,
wink, wink.
Well, I wear so much Patagonia anyway in the clinic that people think I'm sponsored.
Yeah.
They're like, every time I see you, you have a Patagonia shirt on. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't know. I guess I'm just super cool.
Yeah.
So
we're definitely too cool to do sponsor shout outs. Like shirts that we're wearing right now for surfingpaddling.com.
Yeah.
Black and white. I mean, we would never stoop that low.
No, not at all. I mean, some would call that an accident. And that's what I'll go with. Great minds think alike, right?
Yeah. We so congratulations, episode 10.
Yeah, man. You too. It's been fun.
Yeah. This is it. So I was telling you earlier, like I listened to another podcast and they're talking about how tons of people are coming out with podcasts and shows, and they're like, oh yeah, wait until they get to episode 300 like we are. And I'm sitting there going, dude, I got kids, I got a wife, I'm doing the paddling thing. It's amazing we're at 10 right now.
Yeah, it's even amazing we have 5 listeners, you know?
I know.
I'm really grateful for that. No, it's been, no joke, it's been a lot of fun because I'll give you an example of how fun it's been for me. So this past week, 2 physical therapists reach out to me through the podcasts and also Instagram, but both of them commented on the podcast, and one guy was from Hawaii. Yeah. And a physical therapist who you know, and then another physical therapist from Canada, and both of them kind of said the same thing, like good job, just digging the content. So that was pretty cool to have someone or a couple people in my profession reach out, and the PT in Canada even implied that what we're doing is even changing up the way he might treat certain patients. And I have a feeling he listened to the scapular dyskinesia episode, and maybe I inspired or insulted him. I'm not sure, but no, it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you.
Are there any new baseball fans? That's what I want to know.
Oh yeah, no, I'm trying really hard to not even like say the word baseball around you anymore, you know? But here we go again.
Yeah, here we go. I don't know if we'll get onto baseball today. We'll see.
I'm gonna try hard not to.
You know, I feel bad because we did miss last week, and the week before we were like, oh yeah, that was just a one-time thing. Mm-hmm. But I want to let everyone know that we were really trying hard to make episode 10 kind of a special one. Because to us it's special, and it should be special for you guys. So we are making it somewhat special. It's just going a little bit into maybe episode 11 or 12 where we're going to start getting really special with it. But today I definitely have some things we could talk about. I had a listener contact me and talk about, really liked when we were talking about getting into waves easily and the different ramps and the angles. And so he asked about, can we break down when people get pitched, what's happening there. So I think we're going to go into that, which would be really fun. Mm-hmm. But before we get to that, I'll tell you, I over the last 2 weeks I did the bike-in adventure again with the lot open this time. Mm-hmm. So I did it with Neil because we couldn't quite link up, and I parked about halfway from where we started. A world of difference right there.
Driving 70% of it.
Yeah. So starting only covering half of what we did. Awesome. But so when I got there, my legs were warmed up, my body was warmed up, and I didn't feel like leg jello. So my surfing, I felt, was really strong for like the first hour and a half. And then I was just like, all right, the crowd started coming on it, and Neil had left, so I wasn't having as much fun like talking with him in between waves, and I only saw a few other people I knew. So I went in, and I was telling you, I got a little salty. And I can't even remember why I was getting salty, but I didn't get a good night's sleep. So I'm going to blame it on the poor night's sleep the night before, because I rarely will get salty. Saltypt.com. Again, we're never going to go that low to thank our sponsors just in the middle of a set. Anyway, I got a little salty.
Nice.
And then I saw you. And I don't know, like, did I come across pretty salty at that point?
No, if that's you being salty, then you're probably one of the nicest guys of all time.
Okay.
No, you weren't salty, but you did mention, to jog your memory, you did say the antics out in the lineup were rather frisky that day.
Yes, they were bothering me, and they usually don't. But it was funny because I at that point Neil had left, and so I was going solo on the way back to the car, and hopped on the bike, and literally within 30 seconds I felt better again. And I had a great surf, I had a great bike in, and even though I kind of was sleep deprived and kind of ornery, and I guess my standard of ornery, within a minute I was already feeling better biking back out by myself without the company that we had. So I definitely think that there is a benefit to the whole adventure. I know that we had asked ourselves, would it be any different if we rolled up and the lot was open? And it really wasn't that morning, because when Neil and I rolled up, nobody was out because it was kind of onshore and crumbly and high tide still. Nate went out, caught a few, and then we went out, and it was just the two of us for a half hour, and then people started to come. So I don't know. I still don't know. If I rolled up and it was like 30 guys, maybe I'd feel differently, but I still felt like the overall adventure was totally worth it, and we'll be doing it, I think, monthly for sure.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sorry I missed out. I kind of felt like a chump because I said I was going to go, and then dad life happened, and I was like, I'm going to just drive out there. I'll see you out there, And I really wanted to do it with you to kind of get that whole experience again. At the end of the day, it was like, this is going to tell you like how what an American I am. I just wanted to bring more than one board for a change. Like I wanted more. I wanted to bring boards I hadn't ridden in a while. Like you saw me and you're like, what do you mean you're riding your single fin? And I was like,
it was pretty bad for that, I would think, but I'm sure it was fun for you.
Yeah, you would think. But like, I mean, that was kind of the thing. I had it in my head, and sometimes I do this, and I don't know if it's a bad habit or just me being curious, but sometimes I just get in the mindset the night before a surf, like, I'm going to ride my single fin tomorrow no matter what. Or I'm going to ride my twin fin tomorrow no matter what. And I don't think it's necessarily because I get bored, but because I want to mix it up and I want to experience a certain sensation again. And with the COVID lockdown, I had been riding a thruster for, 14, 15 straight weeks. Biking into that spot, I was only bringing a thruster because that was like probably where I was going to air the least, right? Like I could probably surf the most conditions with the thruster and have an okay time no matter what. And so I was like kind of shake the dust off this single fin that I have, and I just really wanted to ride it. And sometimes I kind of feel like I surprise myself when I push boards in conditions where you're really not supposed to take them out. And I think that was one of those sessions, because when you left, I don't want to be that guy, but I guess I'll be that guy. But when you left, man, it got so good. No, it did. it did get better, and it got bigger, and it was pulsing. And so there were like sets that were maybe a foot or two overhead, and but it was kind of windy and churned up still, but like really peaky when it came together. And man, it was just so much fun. And I pushed the single fin, and it was great. And I surprised myself with what it could do out there. So it was a really good time. And I think partly I had so much fun because I surprised myself, not so much that like I was ripping or anything.
That's a better surprise than when I pushed my single fin and ended up with 13 stitches in my foot and out for 4 months.
yeah, that's a surprise too, just on the other end of the spectrum.
So just make sure that you have a longer leash than I had.
Yeah, because your single fin is 5'8", right? It's a Andreini. Yeah. Mine is 6'4". It's also an Andreini.
You should get a longer leash.
Probably should. Yeah.
Speaking of different feelings, we also had a chance to hop behind the boat.
That's right. So. That's actually another reason why we missed a week, because my wife has a rule that if I spend too much time with you, she's probably going to divorce me. So we had to take a week off because I went wake surfing with Rob.
Yeah.
Now we're back at the podcast today. But no, all jokes aside, that was a great day. And thanks again for taking us out, because it had been a while since I went wake surfing. But man, that is... That's just a whole lot of fun, is what that is. You know, like, there's, like, no other way to describe it. It's, like there are moments, and keep in mind, I don't come, like, where you come from, like, a wakeboarding, wake surfing background. Like, anytime I get near a boat or get behind a boat, it's a novel thing. I'm, like, you know, working the kinks out every single time, and, but, like, you have moments out there where it honest to God feels like surfing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really, really fun. So thanks for that.
Yeah, it was funny to watch you kind of progress through that relearning of the wave.
Yeah.
Jim, you were coming. He was coming off the bottom like it was a real wave, a ocean wave. Which, you know, the way that an ocean wave breaks is it draws energy. Obviously, the swell is bringing energy perpendicular into the beach, and the water, the front of the wave actually goes up the face. It actually, as it rises, as it starts to break, the front of it rises up. And so when you put your board on rail at a 90-degree angle to that motion of energy, you create thrust out the bottom. So a bottom turn coming right off the bottom, you create thrust. Whereas on a boat, imagine the boat is actually parallel to shore, kicking out the wave. Now, you traverse the same way that you would an ocean wave. You traverse it sideways, but the energy is not perpendicular to the beach at that point, or even perpendicular to the boat. It's more at an angle, almost with you traversing with it. And so when you're on the rope and you're holding the rope, you don't feel a difference. You're bottom turning the same technique, the same biomechanics that you would, except that you have the boat to pull you through that part up into the lip, and then you can, you know, practice a really strong top turn. But as soon as you drop that line, man, it's a whole different ball game. You have to really work more on speed generation, almost as if you're surfing a 1 foot wave that has no power. But you progress through that like relearning curve, and by the end it was like nothing was different. It was like ripping. Yeah, it was super fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was. I'm not going to lie. It was a little embarrassing the first couple times. I was like,
you were getting frustrated. I'm like, dude, Jim, just relax, man. This is gonna be fun. You're like, why isn't it working?
Oh, the board. What's wrong with this board, man?
Yeah, I think we did 3 board switches, and we're like, that's cool.
I think you need your boat fixed. Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Like, I was trying to explain it to someone. When you let go of the rope, it feels like, it kind of feels like you're surfing a wave and you're trying to beat a section.
Yeah.
Constantly. Like, you're just pumping, except it never ends. And you're doing, like, little check turns and maybe floaters. For me, it was really hard to really come hard off the bottom, because that's when you lose the energy. But, like, you're just staying in maybe the mid to top half of that little wave the whole time to harness the energy.
Yeah.
And one of my other friends, he saw a picture from when we did it in the past, and he kind of gave me shit for hanging onto the rope. And but like, I think that's because I really love that feeling of like bottom turning, and it's also easier when you're out there on the boat. But it's just also so much fun, and maybe in wake surfing culture, like, I'm a kook, but like, it's so much fun to just like do countless bottom to top turns, and it's like, man, I must have done like 300 plus of those things, and like, like, I told myself, like, okay, man, like, it's been a little bit since you've done this, like, just go easy, don't get too sore the next day, right? And like, we were all done, kind of, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. And then you're like, oh, you can go again. I'm like, all right, give me that rope. And then And then, and so I went again, and then when we were going back, like I just held on for like 3 miles because I was like, all right, well we're going that way anyway, so I might as well just like, get 200 more schwacks in. And dude, I woke up like bent over. I'm not even kidding. Like I was so sore from like my shoulder blades down through my ass, down through my hamstrings, and I'm just shaking that loose right now. And and I usually tell people like that are in pain or you're doing something new, just do a little bit, and if you're sore longer than 48 72 hours, it means you did too much. Dude, I was sore for like 6 days, so really paid the price for it, but it was worth it, man. It was so much fun.
Yeah, that was fun. And it was fun. I felt like a mini science lab out there, having Ed and his devices on his board, which we'll talk about at a future date. He doesn't want us talking about it right now.
Yeah.
But I was so excited. Like he put the device on his board, and we've already got data back from it, and it's wild. I can't wait. He says a couple more weeks, and then maybe we'll have him on to explain it, because I won't do it justice.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah,
So
no,
good.
that'll be great. I can't wait for that. Ed's a super smart guy, and we won't give away what he's doing because he made me sign a non-disclosure clause. But yeah, I'm super excited. I think you and him are going to nerd out on the math of that discussion, and I'll just be like in the back taking a nap. But,
Jim, are you still there? Jim, are you there?
yeah. Like Dr. Claw? What?
Dr. Claw. Oh, I know what our next intro song is going to be.
Inspector
Bum,
Gadget.
bum, 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 bum. Oh, man, that's a classic.
Yeah, I showed that show to my son like a month ago. It was on YouTube. You can find like all the classics now on YouTube, and man, it just blew his mind. It was so much fun to go back and watch Inspector Gadget. Like I hadn't watched a Inspector Gadget episode since like 1989. So
It's so
it was pretty
good.
interesting to see.
Just as an aside, because we never get off on tangents, but to get the original Adam West Batman movie and watch it with him, because it is so unbelievably goofy. There's no scary parts in it, and it's the most hilarious thing when the kids are that age watching it.
Cool. No, I kind of like, I feel like that with a lot of things. Like we were watching Tom and Jerry and Mickey Mouse and like all these things that you and I used to watch in like, the late 80s, early through mid 90s.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there watching like Donald Duck like yell at Daisy Duck, and you're like, whoa, this is insane. Like I can't believe this was like a TV show. There's like racism and bigotry and like, oh my gosh,
extreme violence. Like Tom and Jerry.
Yeah, they
Holy
like
smokes.
shoot each other with guns, and
Yeah.
it's totally insane. But yeah. So when my wife's not around, I'll let him watch it. But when she's around, like just a little bit, no. But yeah, no, it's kind of fun to realize how far we've come. Is I guess a culture. I guess nowadays maybe we've taken a step back, but that's another aside. But yeah, so pretty interesting
cool.
to say the least. Yeah.
Cool. So some more feedback we got from the show, which I think is really positive. We've got a whole group of people listening on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. But we've also have a good amount of people watching on YouTube, and they really appreciated it when we put stuff up on the screen and post. So today what I thought we might try, and we'll just see how it goes, we're going to actually I have a couple video examples that I use in my level 2 class that we'll walk through and mark up and talk about and see how it goes. And you and I, our job is to remember that not everybody's looking at where we're looking. We have to try to describe what we're looking at, and then force everybody to watch the YouTube video too. So,
that's it.
So here's the question. When does a surfer know they aren't being let into the wave? Is there a visual cue? Is there a kinesthetic cue of when they're not getting let in? You know what I mean by that? Where they feel like they don't quite have it, or they are about to get pitched over. So just before we even pull up some video, Any thoughts on that? Like, how do you can you think back of times where you're like, oh, nope, I'm not, and then you eject? So how do you know when to eject? In other words, is it visual? Is it kinetic? Is it feeling? Is it something you hear?
Yeah, I think I'm going to give the Rob Machado answer and say, what do you mean, how do you know? You just feel it.
You just feel it. Okay, so it's kinesthetic.
Lucky for me, I get pitched about 5 to 10 times a session, so it's kind of like, it's kind of second nature. Like, yeah, that's a tough thing for me to articulate. Like, I think when you get pitched, like for me, it's maybe a sense of weightlessness that comes.
Okay.
Like, there's just something from like being prone on a board to the transition of popping up where you know right out of the gate it's not going to work.
You're not dropping down. So you're on your feet. You're like, I'm not dropping down this thing at all.
Yeah.
I'm not airdropping. I'm not sliding down it. I just feel this weightlessness. So that's a really good kinesthetic cue.
Yeah, maybe that's it. And sometimes I know it, like at our local spot, like sometimes I'll purposely challenge myself. Like I know I'm going to do a late drop. So sometimes that's the challenge, is like, okay, let me like see if I can airdrop this.
Yeah.
And then in other times on average days, it like even surfing for however long I've been surfing, 25 years, it'll catch me completely off guard.
Right.
And then I'll have to retroactively like analyze it and go, oh, like, yeah, I was like totally in the wrong spot there.
Yeah.
Or
you have to go to your therapist first because of the shame that you feel.
Yeah, exactly. I've kind of worked like I have no more ego, or I have a very little ego now. So like I said, if I fall so much during the session and I ride single fins and weird things now, like I've kind of let go of.
But getting pitched it's like psychologically a tough thing to come back from sometimes. Like unless you eject at the right time and get through the back, if you hold on too long thinking, oh, I'm going to make this, and then you get destroyed, one, it physically hurts more if you don't eject. And two, I think psychologically it hurts you more. It takes you longer to get back into that groove.
Yeah, it can definitely rattle your confidence, right?
Yeah.
Like we've probably all had that experience where we've been under the water for like 5 seconds and it felt like minutes, and you come up kind of gasping for air. And at least for me, when that happens, it's usually because I got caught off guard, not because I can't hold my breath for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And when you think you have it and you get pitched and you don't have it, that's a good way to kind of get caught off guard. And so sometimes those wipeouts can feel like more violent than they probably are, but like, yeah, that's really not so hot for our confidence building. And going back to our discussion last time on that like anxiety, fear, panic scale, like the more we convince ourselves that we can't do it, we start kind of shifting the needle towards the fear, panic that makes us maybe not want to do it again. Right. So like kind of what I think is worth a go is like if you do get pitched, going back to some of those motor learning things, is kind of like taking a step back and like just sitting on the beach and watching people do it successfully, and then having that honest conversation of going, what am I doing versus what they're doing?
Yeah.
And more often times than not, it's not a fitness thing, right? Like we all want to be better paddlers, and like you probably have like prereq strength if you can like do push-ups and pull-ups and dips, right? So what does that leave? That leaves paddling mechanics and experience and wave judgment, so those are kind of like I would argue that the experience and wave judgment is like that probably takes a decade, or took me over a decade to learn, and I'm still learning, obviously. So
And that's what I cover in level 2, because it's funny you mentioned that. The folks that have taken the level 2 course that have experience, their feedback is, one, it's awesome. I'll pat myself on the back for that one. But two, it's I didn't really learn anything necessarily new, but you put words to the things that I learned after decades of looking at waves and making decisions and things. And so we've kind of talked a little bit about it with the wave angles and the ramp angles and that sort of thing. Today we're going to go a little bit an extension into that to see, when you get pitched. In hindsight, you can go back, just like you're saying. You kind of retroactively look at what just happened, and then watch what the surfers that's not happening to, and seeing, is there something I could do differently? And then there is a proportion of waves that will go unridden because of the way that they come in and they break. It's just physics doesn't allow you to get into it. Mm-hmm. But my argument is that there are fewer of those than you think. So some people say, oh, that wave didn't let me in. Well, was it a poor strategy on that person's part, or was it a wave that actually would not physically let them get down the face of it, for example? Mm-hmm. So the most amazing thing about it is that since we are a show about math and science and surfing, what's happening when we make these wave judgments of positioning, timing, and taking off, there's an enormous amount of calculus going on in the background of our brain, which is the rate of change of the slope of an angle, geometry, which we've already talked about, and trigonometry. So all of these things are actually happening in our complex brains without us thinking about it. And so those disciplines of math actually help us explain it a little bit better. And sometimes when you understand it a little bit better, you come to terms with why you did something wrong or why you did something right faster, and you can shorten that learning curve that you were talking about through experience. Mm-hmm. So I love the idea of the kinesthetic cue of feeling weightlessness. I think in addition to that, I was going to say, when you start going up instead of down, that would mean that you're probably not going to make the drop. But I love the weightlessness one. That one is a pretty neat one. So let's take a look at some video. Sound good?
Yeah, right. Sounds cool.
So I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. So you can see my screen okay?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to play this up to the point where John is about to get up, and I'm going to try and stop it. And we're going to play a little game. All right? There's no right or wrong answer. But you let me know, is he going to make it or is he going to get pitched? And keep in mind, John's a freak. So you're more likely to be right if you say he's going to make it.
Right.
So for those of you that don't see my screen, it's this mutant of a wave that we see in this first frame. John's in the lower left, basically paddling almost in flat water. The wave looks to be about 5-foot Hawaiian and 15-foot face. And I'm going to go ahead and play it here. And he's starting his pop-up there. So I only played it for maybe a second and a half. So based on what you see here in this frame, Jim, he's about halfway up the face. There's a nice little curve running up behind him. The guy behind him is definitely pulling over the wave. You think he's going to make it, or he's going to get pitched?
Well, I'm gonna preface this answer with I have not seen this video, and I would say he's going to make it, and I'll tell you why I think that.
Excellent. Let's go.
So there's someone behind him, whether that guy's on a surfboard or a bodyboard, I don't know.
Yeah.
But where he's at, I mean, that wall is like straight up and down. That's like a reverse, like mini Chopu right there.
Yeah.
And this wave is really unusual because if you look even deeper where that other guy pulled off, it's like there's that chip shot section.
Yes.
Like there.
Yeah, this
so
area.
you have like a wave within a wave.
Yeah.
And so like that guy was very smart to pull out because he was going to just fall off a cliff if he, for whatever reason, paddled into that. But where John is, this wave's kind of like horseshoeing back towards the apex of the wave. And so he's on a nice transition there, and it looks like it's, if you draw a line, like it's a nice, I don't know, what is that, a 40, 45 degree incline versus like maybe an 80, 85 degree, like maybe 15 feet behind him. So I think he's in a good spot to make it.
I'm going to say you are correct, sir. He will make it, and for those same reasons. And I love the way that you described this. You started to look at the transitions, and that's what this is all about. It's about the transitions where they are when they take off versus the transition below them, where they're going to end up going, right? And so if we look at this, you can see that it's steeper behind him and above him than it is below him. And that is normally a recipe for success. Whereas if it was the opposite, if it was flatter on top, like let's say he was higher up on this wave and you see this transition at the top, that chip shot part.
Yeah.
If he was up there and he was looking at this, let's say he was up here on this part, that's more of a recipe for disaster, which we'll see in a minute. Now, also the rate of change of how fast this thing forms. So going back to frame 1, where he's almost in flat water, and all of a sudden, in a second and a little, he's at like 45 to 60 degree ramp already. That is a very fast rate of change from the ramp going from, say 8, 9, 10 degrees to 60. Right? And that quickness of slope, that change of slope, that's calculus. That's all differential calculus. And that's what's going through his brain right now, even though he's probably never taken calculus. Through years and years of looking at waves like this, he's developed that skill to look at it and process that calculation in his head. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed with it so you can see how unbelievably skillful he is. And then he disappears and out the back. But let's slow this down to 1/8 of the speed. We'll see kind of that transition. So he takes 1 stroke, 2 strokes. Now he starts his pop-up motion right here. And as he starts his pop-up motion, it's still got that steepness behind him with a nice ramp below him, nice transition ramp below him. So everything's in order there. By the time he gets to his feet and set, look at that. I mean, that is vertical where he is. He has to stick his whole body into the arm, and he's actually navigating the rail of the board through a very tight transition rate below him. So he did everything right, and with his freakish nature, he was able to make this. But I would still argue that 99% of us would have eaten reef on this one, for sure.
Yeah, you got to wonder how many times he ate it on that wave before he did that.
He's on his tippy toes on this frame. Tippy toes right there. Oh, and then he finally hits the bottom. Yeah, you're right. How many times did he eat it? So let's go to another one, shall we? Is this a fun game for you?
Yeah, that was good. It makes me think of board selection too, because obviously that wave was pretty good size, but because of the boxiness and steepness of it, you almost think like you need a shorter board to kind of fit versus like a big gun, right? Like anything over 7+ feet probably wouldn't have been able to do that, even though
the
you
nose would have stuck.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is where he positions himself to get into it. He's not chip shotting in and getting the speed and getting down through those steep transitions early. He's waiting to the last minute to get that tight transition.
Yeah.
And so that's that timing of it. It's, do you take the strategy of chip shotting in or do you stay in front of it? At this wave, there wasn't enough time to take a chip shot to get the speed that you need to get down in front of that second section to make those transitions. Whereas the clips that you sent me that we talked about a few weeks ago, there was enough time. So again, that goes back to strategy. All right, here we go. This one's kind of freakish. I'm going to go big screen on it so you can see the full thing. Can you see the full thing better now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So first frame, this is about 1.5 seconds or so. So he's in basically, so what we're looking at here, this one's really freakish. He has almost like a 4-foot wave that he's paddling into, but on top of the 4-foot wave is another 10 to 15 feet above that. That's not as steep of an angle. So he's paddling in, And he's getting to his feet right about here. He starts his pop-up motion. Make or no make?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I see I'm biased because we're anticipating him not to make one, but I'm going to just trust my gut here. I'd say he makes it just because of, he's under the lip, or he looks like he's taking off under the lip, but just to his right, it still looks rather tapered or smooth.
Yeah.
So I think he could do it.
Yeah. You are correct, sir. He actually makes this one. And this one, he has a nice little ride.
That's amazing.
Through that one. But the freakishness of this one, if you look early on, look at where thinking about where he's positioned in terms of distance from the beach, he's right under this hook, which is the mini wave in front. It's the lower wave, right? He's not positioning himself up on this top flatter portion. He's trying to get the steeper bottom portion because he's recognized if he tries to do this chip shot, it's not going to give him the speed with gravity to get into it. But he's under this. So he's basically catching only a 4-foot wave that morphs into this freakishly tall 15-foot wave.
That's such a mind bender. Like, I couldn't even imagine surfing a wave like that. Like, having the mindset that you're going to go out there and try to be cool, calm, and collected and go for the head-high portion of the mutant.
Yes.
Without being intimidated by the triple size aspect. Like, if you just look at the whole body of water.
Well, and look at where his buddy's located, right? So his buddy pulls back, and then he's still actually in the wave. He's in that little section of that steep part. So that was one where the back of the wave really morphed into the bottom part of the wave and made the bottom part of the wave even more powerful as opposed to taller necessarily.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And that's just beautiful positioning. I mean, great timing, great positioning. Couldn't have done much more on that one. So there's another make.
Yeah, I really like just kind of watching these things and practicing. So if you go back a couple frames there, Rob, right where his buddy's looking at him on the shoulder. So that looks really scary, right? And then go another frame or two, another frame. And then look, imagine right there. And then imagine his buddy. Like if John wasn't there, his buddy's obviously backing off because John has the wave.
Yeah.
But if we didn't have a reference point and you were out there surfing and you tried to take off where his buddy is, which is 10 feet to John's front side, you're still going to get pitched because look at that transition, right? It's straight up and down almost. It's maybe 70 to 85 degrees. So even in this weird lineup, there's a 10-foot amount of real estate where you're either going to make it or not.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's kind of what I was talking about, right? If you just keep watching stuff like this and watch the guys that are really good, you realize, and keep in mind, I'm not an expert at this. I get pitched every day. But that amount of real estate is what changes the experience to either you're falling or you're getting tubed, right? So
yeah. That's a great point because if you look at where he is in relation to John, like you said, it's only about 10 feet difference, maybe a little bit more, but he wouldn't be positioned this far out in order to catch this wave. He'd buff that one. He'd have to come inside closer. He'd have to move in here and position himself closer in order to get this front part of the wave. And as you pointed out, if we go in line of where he is, this would be the lip and the rate of change, which would then therefore pitch him forward. And over. Whereas when you look at when John picks it up, look at the angle of the wave as he's at his feet now. Boom. That is such a mellower transition than where his buddy would have had to pick it up at a much more drastic ramp or angle.
Yeah. I mean, last week I talked a little bit about visualization in the context of fear, but we've all heard the term mind surf. And it sounds kind of silly, but I really like it. Like, if you're looking at the lineup, you literally are trying to visualize yourself being successful out there, right? So, you're trying to find those, seams that are 10 feet apart. Where am I going to sit? How am I going to know I'm there? What do I need to line up with? How do I triangulate my spot, right? So what I mean by that is you're trying to figure it out from the shore, right? And then when you're out there, you're going, okay, I need to kind of maybe test this out. Shoot, I would go out there and I would probably need to get pitched 5 times before I figured it out. But once you found that 10-foot real estate, in a perfect world, you stay in that spot. But this break might be shifty. I can't tell if that is a reef. It's a reef. It's maybe more mechanical. And then you line a spot up on the shore, maybe behind you, in a spot to your right or left to try to make sure you're triangulated in the spot you think you are. And that kind of maybe thought process might make all the difference to maintain that position for that seam where it's successful versus not.
Yeah. And it's psychologically, it could be very daunting. It could be where you take off needs to be 10 feet deeper than you're comfortable with.
Yeah. And,
the waves that we're looking at here, he's made. But for every one made wave, it could be a ratio of 10 to 1, 10 misses for every one make. So what are the visual cues of the wave coming in that makes it look like that's the right one? And then on top of that, psychologically, you have the crowd to deal with. Like, okay, it's my turn. Next wave that comes in, despite it looking badly, I'm going. Or do you pass on it and wait for the next one, and now you're dealing with crowd management and psychology and sociology with that.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, because to be successful, right, you have to make mistakes sometimes, right? And so if no one was watching, it's kind of like that saying, right? Dance like nobody's watching. I thought I thought of that saying after our last podcast on fear. I was like, man, I should have said that. But yeah, it's like if your social anxiety is holding you up for going for it on a tricky spot like this, then you're just missing reps, right? Yeah. Whereas what you probably don't see in this footage, and only John could probably answer, is how many times did he have to fall before he learned how tricky that was and where to be, and now he's getting these clips of him getting shacked out of his mind. So I tend to think if you don't fall, you're not going for it. So I kind of look at it as like a calibration period when I surf a new spot. At least that's how I justify it in my egotistical mind. Like, if I fall in front of people, I go, "Oh, I'm just calibrating, man." Like you watch the next one. Oh, I fell again. Shoot, never mind.
Well, inevitably, wiping out kind of gets all your jitters out as well. If you have a hard time calming your heart rate and calming your nervousness, taking a fall and picking yourself up from it actually sometimes can clear all that and be like, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And then you've identified your fear as being, oh, I feel like I'm going to get hurt. Or, well, I got that out of the way in front of the crowd, so that would be more social anxiety. Mm-hmm. Very cool. All right, you ready for another one?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Look at how nice that angle entry is on his paddling stroke. Oh, dude, that is money right there.
Yeah, so Rob, we still have to describe this for the
the
non-visual people.
Thank you. So here, John is again pretty much in flat water. There's a little bit of an angle to where he's at. He's kicking fairly hard. He's got a really high angle arm entry. Behind him is this warpish looking 12-foot wave. It's a closer view. He's got a buddy on the inside pulling back, and John is going for this wave. So let's press play, and I'll pause it right there.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
I might have paused it too late.
Well, if you stopped right there, like earlier,
okay.
I'd say he's got this, because it. Like, the transition looks really mellow there, right? Just totally. On the still. But, obviously, again, 10 feet back, his buddy's wisely backed out because there's almost a 90-degree wall that he'd have to jump off of.
Yeah.
But then John's looking at, maybe a 30-degree transition from where he's angled. And so he looks pretty good there. So I would say
he looks fine. I think he's going for it here. But all of a sudden, right there, he realizes something.
Yep. It's.
And you see it?
Yeah, I think it's jacking too quick. Like, it's going too vertical there, and right there, he He either pulls back or he's going over the falls.
Yeah, so you can see, so basically right now he's starting the motion of pulling back. So I'll play it in its entirety. And that was a pretty good call in terms of that. So now in hindsight, let's see if we can be John and see what he sees. So right now I think he's still in it to win it. And this is frame 2. He still has a nice mellow transition in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And behind him it's still steep.
Mm-hmm.
When he realizes, nope, it was right about there.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere along this, he felt flatter. And it's almost like, okay, he started to look at this. And you can almost see that, how right below him in this frame, it's a little bit flatter than where he's steeper than where he's at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So you see how it's flatter at the top of the wave where he is, or he's kind of on that cusp, that transition line. And right below him, it has formed into a steeper ramp and not a mellower ramp. So had it stayed kind of more in transition with where he's at, that would have been a go.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go even further into this, just two more frames, you can really see how where he's at, he's much flatter. See how he's flat?
Yeah.
And below him, it's steeper, that transition. So this is kind of the recipe for disaster, where if you're looking down, visual cue, I think this is, for him, it was more, I think, kinesthetic, like what you're saying. He felt this weightlessness where he's not going down the wave anymore. He's actually going up the wave. Mm-hmm. And he felt that, and he immediately started pulling back on the reins of the horse to get out with enough time. Visually, you can look, as you're paddling into this thing, visually, if you look down and it's much steeper than your body feels in terms of flatness, and you're not tilted downward, you're flat going toward the beach rather than tilted down going down a ramp, that visually with the kinesthetic cue kind of adds to that, like, warning, pull back or eject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just look at the apex of that wave. Like,
I know.
Like if a 90 degrees is straight up and down, this thing's like beyond that. So like, and he's like, 10, 15 feet from how crazy that is. So I got to imagine just the rate of change is super high. But like, if you go back a couple frames, you can actually see him kicking really hard, which tells me, so like, look how hard he's kicking. Right? So, like, again, we've talked about this in some of our earlier episodes. He's doing everything he can to get the board planing. Yeah. And then right there he gives up, or he knows he has to stop.
Right there he knows he's got to slow down and stop.
Yeah.
So it's right there he's like, I'm going for this, and it's right about there he sees something or feels something wrong, and he pulls back. And that was, from this camera angle, too, it looked like it was going to happen a lot faster than it actually did. Mm-hmm. You see that? Like, he pulls back, and look at how long it takes. There's the section that he was at. And that thing basically is a tube. Yeah. Where he's at.
Yeah, go back a little bit. So, there. Like, right. So, go back a little bit more. So, he's like, oh, I think I got it. And then right there, he sees the sponger in his line.
Yeah. Right.
And then keep going.
Right.
So he backs off. He's looking at the sponger, and right there he's saying, "Son of a bitch, you sponger."
Well, I think if you look at this wave, knowing John, he's probably like, "Man, I should have been right there.
Right.
I should have been I should have been further in to catch this from where he was." So he was actually behind the wave where he wanted to be. He wanted to be here. Basically at that frame, down and in front. And I think we've talked about it at Spot X, like, where you feel like, oh, I'm on the chip shot. You're actually on the back side of the chip shot, and you're too flat on the chip shot, and the chip shot didn't work. Mm-hmm. The top of the wave, the chip shot didn't break. It didn't, the ramp didn't steep enough. The geometry of it is that didn't steep enough fast enough, so you didn't get that chip shot speed coming down it to get into that steeper section. And that's actually, that's what was happening in Spot X the other day. I was taking a bunch of chip shots, and then all of a sudden it would like wall up on the inside, but I was already standing at the bottom of the wave by then.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what he realized there.
I'm going to borrow a term from the radiology world, that one view is no view, right? So like if you get an x-ray of your ankle or something, like you can have a clean looking view that says you're not fractured, and then you get another view and it's like, whoa, there's an obvious fracture there.
Yeah.
And like it's really cool kind of seeing the nuances in these transitions from the side view. So like if you're watching this and you're going, yeah, like I can see that makes sense. Like keep in mind, like when you show up to your beach, you might be at a different angle and some of these nuances might be hard to see.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not the greatest surfer in the world, but if I'm going to surf a new spot, especially a spot like this that's obviously pretty sketchy looking, like what I would personally do is get multiple angles on it from the beach. Like this would be one I would like look at from the parking lot or straight on, and then I would walk down and like to see it from the side. Like remember Kelly Slater's quote, surfing Bell's Beach. He realized how he should surf it after he was an observer looking at it from this point of view, from the side.
From the side, yeah.
So again, that's like one of the best surfers of all time, right? That didn't make the connection that he shouldn't try to get to the bottom to bottom turn. He realized that the transition was mid face and he should do his bottom turn at that kind of like mid portion of the wave, and he picked that up just from his side angle vantage point. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Well,
we got two more, man. Two more. We are looking at an absolute monster of a wave. John is in complete flat water in front of it. And it's, 20-foot face. This would be like a 5-foot Hawaiian wave again. But just this enormous wall of dark green and then light green at the top. And it kind of looks like there's a mini wave about 4 to 5 feet up the monster green wall right behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see if I can stop it in time. Oh, man, I stopped too late.
Yeah, he's not making that.
Yeah.
That's a picture.
This is a picture. In fact, I'll go ahead and play it. So he paddles. He's in flat water. He only takes 2 strokes, and he decides, I'm out of this thing.
Wow.
And he actually duck dives through the back and starts swimming out the back. So he essentially duck dives the wave to get out of it, and then you can see him swimming out the top so he doesn't get pulled over the top. But what's really interesting about this one is in the last one we talked about John probably looking at this wave and wanting to be further inside in order to get in front of that lower transition, that lower wave. Well, this one, he might have been too far inside.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's what in my level 2 course, I call that timing. So positioning is where do you line up along the x-axis, like along the beach? Like, does John pick it up over to the left of him, over to the right of him, or where he's at? And timing is how far out from the beach you start your paddle and where essentially you end it, and that ends up being that space in between becomes your runway. And everyone kind of has different size runways based on the board design and the shape of the wave and where you want to pick it up. So in this case, he came in, on the last one, he was too far outside of his runway where he wanted to be. This one, he was too far inside of the runway and realized it pretty quickly after just taking 2 strokes. He immediately started to eject. I think that one's pretty clear where he felt like he was just in front of the wave too much. Mm-hmm. And the rate of change where he would have had to pick up would have sent him up the wave and basically head over heels.
Yeah, how's that bailout too?
A tough one. Dude, that was so skillful. Like let's just duck dive this and then swim.
Who bails out like that?
Yeah.
I don't think you can teach that. So for those that aren't watching, this guy's about to get pitched over the wave. He's facing the beach. He duck dives facing the beach almost straight down, comes out the top of the wave, and he's facing the other way back out to sea, and he's just paddling back out to sea. Completely avoids...
Is he on his board, do you think, at that point? Or do you think he's lost his board? I think he has it underneath him.
It looks like he's on it, but I don't know.
I think so. Under here, he spins the board. He's underwater in the wave. He's spinning
got his
it
board there.
underwater underneath it. He comes up, and you're right. He's still on his board.
He's on his
paddling.
board. Yeah, he's on his board. That is
He's on his
amazing.
board. That's incredible. So that's. Have you seen that John video where he does the duck dive across his pool underwater?
Yep,
That's
I have.
that's probably that board control that he's played around with in there.
Yeah. For those who haven't seen it, check it out. I think it was a Hurley ad.
And it was a Tour Notes, I think. Peter King Tour Notes thing.
Oh, okay. But yeah, he's like, he's like frog kicking a shortboard under water for like 40 feet or something.
Yeah.
Like, just try to do that. It's so hard.
It's just hard to stay under with that much buoyancy.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
All right, last one. You ready?
I'm ready.
This is Mikey Wright this time.
Hey, Rob, how's the sound? Because I got Gavin in the window yelling at me.
It's all good, man. It adds to
Okay.
the allure and the reality of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, we're going to edit this, right?
No, dude. I've heard
Here.
daddy
Watch
for
this.
like the last half hour.
Look what I got right here. Look at this. Look what I'm trying to do right now, man. Are you?
Is he playing hoops?
He was, and then he pulled it over. Gavin, what are you doing, buddy? Okay, bud. I need to do something for a minute. He said, "You big broccoli sandwich," is what he called me. Okay, we can edit this. Sorry,
I'm gonna
guys.
full on call you a broccoli sandwich next time you snake a wave.
You might just have to.
All right, you ready for this one?
Yeah.
Oh, first of all, the first frame, you
Yep.
see Mikey Wright in flat water kicking. Behind him, once again, is this beast of a wave. It looks very whitewater, a lot of froth on it. You see a board in the upper left-hand corner getting blown away with the offshores. And he is in basically flat water sprinting. Make or might not make?
I'm going to say make, and I'll tell you why again. He's kind of taking the same technique. I think this is the same wave or same spot that John was surfing. A similar concept, just a massive wave behind him. And again, he's probably at a 30-degree run right there. But what's unusual about this wave, and maybe it's the angle, it almost looks like whereas John's was, the shoulder was bending back towards the apex. Like now the shoulder to his right almost looks like it's bending away.
Yeah.
So I'd still say he's going to make it.
Okay. I'll give you a few more frames.
Okay. Okay, stop right there. Now I changed my mind.
Well, what are you seeing? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so that weird mutant shoulder I was talking about, kind of like, you can see I call it a rib. I don't know what you call it, but like where his, like his buttock is or his mid back, like you could see that wave kind of like demarcated, right? Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
And so that's such a weird place to take off with that weird shoulder on the side. Like if that shoulder behind him was just a bit more subdued, I don't think the wave would do that. But because we know
talking about that rib, so that rib here basically is the lip line of the wave that he's actually supposed to be catching.
That's right.
And so he ends up getting almost behind that. You said, I liked how you put like his midsection and his lower torso are behind that line.
Yeah.
And he's not getting down and in front.
That's it. You could tell he lost momentum, like you said earlier. He's traveling up the wave face, and that you can tell that transition is going to be pretty vertical. So I'd say he's not going to make it.
Yeah.
And there he goes, and there's the jump.
There's the eject.
Pretty good jump.
Yeah, and this is something we also talk about in level 2 is the art of the wipeout. You know, how should you eject? Where do you try to position yourself? You notice how he's actually projecting himself out toward the flats to get into this, and he's doing basically a shallow pin drop to try to get, well, actually that one, the lip of the wave hit, and it rebounded to soften his fall. He might have gotten worked on that one, actually, that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, when I say
I'm
pretty
looking
good
at
jump,
it.
it actually looked pretty skillful to me. So like if you go frame by frame, right here, you can see him push off the board. So he knows he's in. He's in shit right there, right? And so he's just trying to get away from the board, and it looked like maybe he was going to execute the pin drop, and then he got kind of put on his side.
Yeah, if he had maybe jumped... Well, he had to jump out to get away from the explosion, but dropped more into this region. He might have been able to get out the back, though it's risky because the lip falls right there. So he would have had to beat the lip in order to get out the back. So he probably realized, you know what, I'm not going to beat that lip. I'm going to go out and basically bounce off the rebound, which is pretty awesome. So there's that rebound right there. It's funny, like I talk about duck diving and getting out through the waves too. And if you can't beat this lip under before it breaks, it's actually beneficial to duck dive here. And I'm for those of you that can't see this. So instead of the lip hits, and I'm actually making a little X about 10 feet inside of where the lip is hitting, so closer to the beach. Because what happens is after that initial impact, there's a rebound of the whitewash, and if you duck dive under the rebound, you can sometimes have a lesser of a beating. So that one actually is a really good example that I'll use sometimes talking about duck dive as well. But yeah, unfortunately, you can see in this, I'm just replaying it now, like you said, he couldn't get the momentum to stay in front of that lip line, and you can see very clearly, again, it's almost like clockwork. When your body is flatter than the transition in front of you, it's almost 100% chance that you're not going to make it. You have to get in front of the steepness. Now, if you can get the transition that's higher where your body is, and the transition is a lower degree below you, so it's steeper, you're going to get the gravity that you need here, and then gently, and I'm drawing a nice smooth, almost like a transition to a skateboard ramp. You have the steepness at the top, and then you smoothly navigate the bottom, and that's a higher chance of making it.
Yeah.
So hopefully that was helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, that was cool.
But that's just kind of a taste of what we do in level 2, making sure that we increase the likelihood of making it. And I always tell people, I'm like, listen, these things that I'm teaching you, we look at this in hindsight, and we can analyze it and be like, oh yeah, you should have done this. If you and I are in that situation, we would have done 10 times worse than that. We'd probably be in the hospital. But these are the things that we learn and we pick up on, and as to your point, we look at it from different angles, and we look at people that do it right, and we try and piece together what are the things they're doing right. This is just a nice little shortcut into, oh, these are the things they're doing right. Even though they probably can't describe it this way, these are the things that you do want to look for. You still need to put the reps in at least watching good people do it right. And then you can look to these things and say, hey, you know what? I gave myself the best chance that I possibly could to make that wave. Is it 100% guarantee every time? No, because nobody has a crystal ball on what that wave is going to do in 2 seconds versus in that moment that you decide to go. So.
Yeah, and putting the reps in for sure is key, right? Like, I mean, anything we know about motor learning, and we've talked about this quite a bit, is like, it's okay to make mistakes, especially in the beginning of the process. So, and again, that's where motor learning and social anxiety kind of work against each other, right? Because if you took out the social anxiety portion of it and you were more willing to make mistakes, you would probably acquire the skill sooner.
Yeah.
Right? And I'll tell you what I mean in a clinical perspective, and I know we're kind of cutting short on time here, but like, if I have a client and I'm showing them an exercise, let's just say it's a squat, and I say, Rob, why don't you show me 15 squats here? And then I stop to correct you every 2 to 3 reps, and I go, Rob, hey, this doesn't look right. Like, your knees are going a little kind of collapsed here, a little valgus. You go, okay, right, all right. And then I go, yeah, you know that, okay, like, stop, Rob. So forget the valgus stuff. Now I want you to think about your shins upright. And you go, okay. And then I go, you know what, Rob? Your back isn't quite neutral when you're squatting. And you're like 6 reps in, and now you're like, I can't make mistakes in front of Jim, right? He keeps correcting me over every little thing. And so there's been motor learning research looking at coaching like that, which is like verbal, tactile cues consistently to correct form, to interrupt people. And then there's been, so we've looked at that compared to, all right, Rob, show me 15 squats. And then your squats are terrible looking in a biomechanically trained PT's mind, right? Like your squats look like garbage, right?
Yeah.
But I let you do it. I just say, go for it. And then you do 15, and then we have a discussion, right? And then I go, okay, I want you to think of this one cue. Keep your back neutral, which is a cue I hate, by the way. But like, let's just say keep your back neutral, right? And then you do it, and maybe it looks a little bit better. And then maybe you just do that for a little bit. Or once you become successful with it, then we'd add another cue. But you've probably had 40 to 50 reps to kind of work out the kinks, so to speak. And that process acquires skill faster than trying to make it perfect within the first set, doing a lot of things. So to kind of take that research and apply it to acquiring skill with surfing, we would say it's okay to fall. It's okay to get your reps in and do a couple pin drops. And it's okay to do that a bunch of times. And that's where we kind of have to be honest with ourselves and go, am I not taking the risk because I'm anxious socially? Or am I, like you said last week, is this a fear of bodily harm? But I would say a good portion of the time, I couldn't tell you the exact percentage, I would say a lot of people pull off on waves because of the social element, right? And I know it because I'm paddling out and it's a younger surfer and he's in the spot. It would be a little bit tricky of a drop, but I know he can do it. But he pulls back because he sees me. And it's really easy to go, oh man, I missed that one, versus like go, fall, look terrible, and then have to like see me staring at him knowing that I saw it, and then make up an excuse for why like it didn't work out, you know? And if we just lost that fear with that whole kind of like interaction and just said screw it, we'd probably get better quicker. Right, yeah. So that's.
I actually attribute Spot X and the culture around Spot X to my ability to make steep drops, and it's because the culture there is, you're paddling for a wave, you're going to catch it, whether you get pitched or not. Mm-hmm. Like if you paddle for a wave and pull back of the line, buddy, like down the beach. No. Start paddling to San Francisco. Like, don't pull back. And it's funny because Spot X, like, that's not how I coach level 2 necessarily. Like, if you start to see these visual and kinetic cues, I say pull back. It's, don't take more strokes than you need, pull back. But I learned at Spot X to fail and to go over the falls. And to kind of learn that and not be afraid of doing that. And actually... At Spot X, you earned respect for even just going for it, oh yeah, dude, you got pitched, yeah. So funny.
NorCal,
hardcore.
Hardcore.
So you got a Don't Bogart My Spot, man, surf travel story you want to share this week?
Yeah, I think I got one for you.
All right.
So for the viewers, listeners, Rob tipped me off, so I had like a couple hours to think about this because we were going to talk about this. I was like, oh, what's a good surf story? And the surf story I'm going to tell is like not even really about surfing. I was just surfing in the like the vicinity. So and maybe there's a point to this story. We'll see if I get to it. But in 2004, I took a year off between. So I had finished my undergrad and then I was going to go to physical therapy school and I had this year off, right? And so I spent 9 to 10 months surfing and going to all these cool spots. And one of my favorite spots that I went to was New Zealand. And I always wanted to go to New Zealand because it just seemed like a really cool place. Like the landscape seemed great, the environment, there was surf there, the accents were cool, right? So I ended up surfing the premier wave there on the North Island called Raglan, and I had all the time in the world. So I ended up parking it like literally. I was traveling. I was in Australia before and met this guy from Hawaii, from Oahu, and this other guy from Japan. And the guy from Japan, his name was Joji. And so we met in a hostel in Australia, and like throughout Australia, we would like continuously link up here and there. Hey, I'm in Byron Bay. Like, let's go link up. And then they were both going to New Zealand, and I was going to go to New Zealand. And we're like, oh, we should link up in New Zealand. And so we did, and we had this, it wasn't a Subaru Outback, but it kind of was like this station wagon thing. And and so we traveled around, we parked it in Raglan, and we were there for about 3 weeks. And we just like camped on Raglan waiting for swell. And for those that don't know Raglan, it's a really good long left. I think it's next to Pavones in Costa Rica, one of the longest waves in the world, and we got it. Like it was great. It's like go there, and like all the Raglan locals will hate me because we have so many listeners, and I'm blowing up their spot. But long story short, we had a great day of surfing, and then and so now we're up on the bluff of what's called Manu Bay, and we're I'm sitting there with Joji, this guy from Japan. And it's just me and Joji, and we're drinking a beer, looking at the sunset. And Joji's English is like not the greatest, and I speak zero Japanese. So like our methods of communicating are really like animated, right?
Yeah.
And Joji asked me if I'd ever seen the Green Flame. Do you know what the Green Flame is?
No.
Okay, so I had never seen the Green Flame. I had no idea what the Green Flame was.
Does he mean the Green Flash?
Oh, Green Flash. Yeah.
Okay.
The Green Flash. Sorry.
Okay, I know what the Green Flash is.
Yeah, so he asks me if I've ever seen the Green Flash, and I was like, no, I didn't know what it was. And he's explaining it to me, right? Like, and Joji was in his 40s. I was like 22 at the time, and he was saying one of the reasons why he wanted to come to New Zealand was that it was like a great spot to see the Green Flash, and that these conditions looked perfect for it. Yeah. And he was explaining like, oh, you need a super clear night, a certain angle near the water. Like, I don't understand all the physics, but for those of you that know what the Green Flash is, the sun goes down and it does this like green flash, right? Like it's really kind of neat looking. Again, I had never seen it. And so he had never seen it either, is what I learned. And he's explaining it to me, telling me one of the reasons why he wanted to be in New Zealand was to see it. And as he's explaining it to me, looking at me, I'm looking out, and it happens. Yeah. Right? Boom! This like green, like fiery, really cool neon kind of thing happened. And it was like gone in an instant. Yeah. And I had never even heard of this before. I'm all,
oh no! And
he said it doesn't happen in Japan, and he's been looking for it for like 20 something years. And I'm like, dude, it just happened. And and he was so bummed out, like, 'cause, like here I am, some guy that's just like had no idea what it was. I'm like, yeah, it just happened, man. Like, you know, Joji. That 20, you know, that 20-year pursuit you've been on, it just happened and you just missed it. And so for the whole rest of the trip, like, we're like, okay, we're going back tonight, Joji. Like, we're going back to Manu Bay Lookout. And it, like, we went back, like, every night for almost 3 weeks and it never happened again.
No! Oh my gosh!
And I felt so bad for Joji, but, yeah, so that's my story. And I think the moral is I don't know what the moral is, but maybe keep your eye on the prize or something. But I just thought that was a pretty funny story I'd share.
That's hilarious. I hope that somewhere out there Joji has seen the Green Flame.
Yeah.
Or the Green Flash. There's a bar in San Diego called the Green Flash. That's why I know about it.
Yeah, I think they're a brewery too. And
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good from what I remember.
That's a good story. I
Thanks,
have
man.
a quick one, and surprisingly, it's the same time frame, 2004. I don't, and honestly, people, we do not like talk about what we're gonna talk about, but just so happened, I was going to J-Bay for the first time with a couple friends, and I was working as a financial advisor after having a sales job. So I went. That math degree really was working for me there. But I had this opportunity to go to J-Bay, and so I took it. And so I had started this financial advisor job. I think I'd been in it maybe 3 months, and then I go up to the boss. I'm like, yeah, I'm taking 2 weeks. I'm going to J-Bay. Luckily, her husband was a surfer, so he's like, yeah, dude, let him go. So I went off to J-Bay. We scored it. Amazing swell. This was like June, so we got early swell. There was one point at which the waves started to go flat. We booked it over to Cape Town. We did the bungee jump on the way, the
Cool.
tallest bungee jump in the world. And then we found out a swell was coming back, so we booked it back. We only stayed one night in Cape Town. We got Cape St. Francis breaking, which
Wow.
is a rarity. It's definitely not as perfect as you saw in Endless Summer 1 or 2. But it was definitely very cool to see that break, because I think that only breaks, they said, like 10 times a year. So, and then we got J-Bay just all time. So what was really interesting about this trip was they have these benches. Have you been to J-Bay?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so they have these awesome benches. Like, we stayed in a place right overlooking J-Bay, but there's these benches that if you just parked in the lot, you could just sit on and watch. And I was sitting there after a session. I was just watching the waves and watching people surf. And there are moments on these surf trips that you kind of have these meditative moments, or I don't know how you'd call them, these revelations of your life. And it just seems so clear in your mind that you should be doing this or that. At that moment in time, surf trips, hikes, long journeys, like big paddles I've done, big swims I've done, I always have this kind of like this revelation moment. And so I specifically remember this one moment. I was sitting on the bench and I was thinking about my grandpa, because he had just passed. And I was thinking about my grandpa. I'm like, my grandpa would have appreciated me going back to school and getting my master's. He would have appreciated that. So I'm sitting there on the bench and I just have this like aha moment. So, the 2 weeks were up. We head back to the States, and I'm living with Lori and my brother at the time. My wife, or she's not my wife at the time, but it was the three of us. It was like kind of like Three's Company. So I tell her about this moment I have on this bench. And Lori's, she's super supportive, but she's like, hey, you know what? Go to work. We'll talk about it this evening. Don't make any decisions. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't just up and leave this new career I've started on a whim. That's just ridiculous. I'm on a vacation high. So Lori goes off to work. I go off to work. Lori comes back at like noon from her job. She had 3 jobs at the time. She came back at noon in between jobs. And she sees me, and I'm playing Xbox. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm a new high score. She's like, what the hell are you doing here? And I was like, oh, I quit my job. She's like, what? Like, you didn't even give him notice? You didn't even think about it? He's like, no, I just went in, looked around, knew I wasn't supposed to be there, went up to the boss and said, yeah, I don't think I should be here. Should I give you my 2 weeks notice or just leave? And she's like, just leave. I was like, cool. My clients that I had created got pushed off to somebody else, and I was off to school the next semester. I started studying for my GMATs that next day. Lori made me start studying for my GMATs. But
that's so cool.
It's just it's funny how those surf adventures kind of help you with those moments in life.
Yeah, you had a moment of clarity and realized it.
Yeah, and that
That's
things
so
just
cool.
didn't feel right. So
That's super cool. Thanks
it's just
for
like
sharing that.
dropping into a wave. You feel that weightlessness, and you going up, and you're like, no, I should eject. So I ejected.
Yeah. No, that's a cool story, man. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Jim, for your time. We went a little over today, but I hope it was helpful for people. That's what we're here for. Talk a little bit about math, a little bit of science, a lot of surfing, and to help you guys out there. So if you guys have questions, if you have things that you want us to talk about, let us know, and let us know how we're doing. In the meantime, we'll see you in the water, and hopefully next week, right, Jim?
That's right.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful week, and see you later.
Thanks, guys.